In this video, I want to explore the history of a Space Marine chapter that has always fascinated me, the Rainbow Warriors. The Rainbow Warriors were one of the original Space Marine factions depicted during the Rogue Trader era. They appeared alongside chapters such as the Ultramarines, White Scars, Iron Hands, and Blood Angels, making them older than many factions that would later become household names among Warhammer fans. Yet despite their early origins, they never made the transition into the first founding legions when Rogue Trader gradually evolved into the Warhammer 40,000 universe we know today. Instead, later lore would classify them as an Ultramarine successor chapter. The origin of their name is particularly interesting. Many believe the Rainbow Warriors were originally named after the real-world Greenpeace vessel Rainbow Warrior, which was sunk by French agents in 1985. Just 2 years before the release of Rogue Trader. That explanation certainly fits the timeline. However, as the chapter was gradually reimagined over the years, they began to take on elements of South American inspiration, particularly drawing on Aztec and Inca themes. Considering that the rainbow held significant importance within Inca culture, I can't help but wonder whether this was always the intended direction for the chapter, or whether Games Workshop accidentally stumbled into something that later proved to be a perfect fit. Adding weight to this theory is the chapter badge itself, a stylized wing and lightning bolt. Both symbols have strong parallels within Aztec and Inca iconography, something we'll return to later. But what do we actually know about the Rainbow Warriors? Like many obscure chapters, concrete lore is remarkably scarce. Visually, the Rainbow Warriors are depicted wearing dark blue power armor, with a rainbow stripe running from the rear of the helmet towards the front. On Mark 7 and Mark 8 helmets, the stripe generally terminates above the eyes. On the Mark 6 Corvus pattern helmets, however, the rainbow often extends all the way down the beak. However, a stripe running the length of the helmet was a common feature during the Rogue Trader era, where it was often used to denote rank: red for a trooper, red and yellow for a sergeant, and white for a captain. While the white stripe seen on Rainbow Warrior helms would later come to be interpreted as a standard chapter marking, it is possible that this particular Space Marine was originally intended to represent a captain. In other depictions of the Rainbow Warriors from the same era, albeit rendered in black and white, and an image I will examine in greater detail shortly, we can see that the central stripe actually appears darker than the flanking stripes. This raises the possibility that the central stripe was not originally intended to be white at all, but rather represented a colour consistent with the rank marking conventions of the period. My suspicion is that there was never any strict consistency applied to their colour scheme. Variations in Space Marine heraldry, company markings and armour colours were fairly common during the transition from Rogue Trader's iconic beaky Marines to the newer armour patterns of 2nd edition. The setting's lore and visual identity gradually became more formalised. How much of the helmet is covered by the rainbow itself is a trivial detail all in all. Personally, I like to imagine the rainbow extending to the front of the helmet where possible, with later helmet designs simply making that impractical due to the grille assemblies. One of the few confirmed pieces of lore concerns their homeworld, a planet called Prism. Prism appears on the chapter Homeworld map published in the 2008 Space Marine Codex. Yet while every other chapter's homeworld is clearly identified, Prism is accompanied by the mysterious notation, record deleted. Whether this was intentional world building or simply an attempt to add mystery, it immediately raises questions. Why were the records deleted? What happened to Prism? And who ordered its removal from Imperial archives? Unfortunately, we have no answers. Another fascinating relic from the Rogue Trader era is the depiction of a Rainbow Warrior named Brother Vermillion. The artwork shows him in combat against the Sister of Battle. Unfortunately for Brother Vermillion, it appears he loses that particular encounter. The image itself raises several interesting possibilities within the lore. First, are the Rainbow Warriors somehow heretical? Their homeworld records have been deleted, and here we have artwork showing a Sister of Battle firing upon one of their warriors. Perhaps the Rainbow Warriors fell from Imperial favour, or perhaps it's the Sister herself who is the traitor. Or perhaps it's simply another example of Rogue Trader lore being somewhat chaotic, as Games Workshop experimented with ideas before the setting became fully established. I'll leave that for you to decide. Of course, there is also a possible out-of-universe explanation. If the chapter's name was indeed inspired by the Greenpeace vessel, then perhaps the artwork references the sinking of the Rainbow Warrior itself. The Sister of Battle, with her fleur-de-lis iconography, could be interpreted as a symbolic stand-in for France. If that's the case, then the image is simply a tongue-in-cheek reference to the real world and highlighting the ridiculous nature of the event, rather than evidence that the Rainbow Warriors had somehow fallen from the Emperor's light. The other detail worth discussing is Brother Vermillion's name. Are Rainbow Warriors traditionally named after colours? Is Vermillion a battlefield callsign rather than a birth name? Perhaps Prism's culture assigns colours based on profession, status, achievement or lineage, much as many surnames in the real world originated from occupations such as Smith, Fletcher or Cooper. Maybe forge workers adopt warmer colours while hunters and farmers favour greens. Or maybe Brother Vermillion simply happened to have the perfect surname for a member of the Rainbow Warriors. We simply don't know. Beyond these fragments, one of the few modern references comes from the Bloodstar campaign. In 748 M41, the Rainbow Warriors fought alongside the Relictors and Fire Lords during a demonic incursion. The campaign was severe enough that all 3 chapters lost their chapter masters. Importantly, this event was referenced in the electronic version of the 6th edition Space Marine Codex released in 2013, proving that the Rainbow Warriors had not been entirely forgotten by Games Workshop, even in relatively recent lore. The only other scrap of lore available is the appearance of a Rainbow Warriors chapter badge on the Command Center tile in Milton Bradley's 1990 board game Space Crusade. It tells us absolutely nothing about the chapter, but I mention it nonetheless as a testament to how sparse the official lore is. When details this trivial get highlighted, you know there is little else to work with. But what about the Aztec and Inca reimagining? As far as I can tell, it wasn't Games Workshop that truly embraced the Rainbow Warriors' South American identity. It was the community. Fans looked at the chapter's name, iconography and sparse lore and collectively began building an interpretation rooted in ancient South American cultures. And honestly, it fits remarkably well. The lightning bolt, for example, immediately invokes Tlaloc, one of the most important gods in the Aztec pantheon. Tlaloc governed rain, storms, agricultural fertility and lightning itself. Lightning was both life-giving and destructive, bringing rain for crops while also heralding devastating storms. The wing motif is a little less direct. In Aztec culture, feathers were far more important than wings themselves. Feathers represented nobility, divinity, and a connection to the heavens. The most famous example is Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. Eagles, hummingbirds, and Quetzal birds all held powerful religious significance. So while the chapter badge may not literally represent a wing in a cultural sense, it could easily be interpreted as drawing from the same symbolism. Alternatively, it may simply combine imperial eagle imagery with South American influences. Then of course, there's the rainbow itself. The rainbow held particular significance within Inca culture and was associated with divine favour, heavenly authority, and imperial power. It became closely linked with the city of Cusco and by extension the Inca state itself. Even today, rainbow flags displayed throughout Cusco draw inspiration from this historical association, although historians continue to debate exactly how the rainbow functioned as an imperial symbol during the pre-Columbian era. Whatever the truth may be, the connection is impossible to ignore. As a caveat, I'm not an expert in ancient South American cultures. I've simply done a little bit of research for this video, so feel free to correct me in the comment section below. My only aim is to provide evidence for how well the Rainbow Warriors suit their reimagining. But is there an official Rainbow Warriors chapter structure? No, there's not. Because there is so little definitive lore, and because Games Workshop is incredibly unlikely to ever expand upon the Rainbow Warriors in any meaningful way, I thought I'd try my hand at creating a chapter structure of my own. Not to replace existing lore, doesn't exist, not to establish a definitive canon, but simply to provide inspiration for hobbyists who might be tempted to paint tiny rainbow stripes on their Space Marine helmets. Before I begin, another disclaimer. If you're from South America or have a deep understanding of Aztec and Inca cultures, I apologise in advance. What follows is inevitably going to blend multiple inspirations together into a distinctly Warhammer interpretation, and and no insults are intended to those cultures. After all, Warhammer has always mixed and matched historical influences. The Black Templars are a medley of various medieval themes, and countless other factions do the same. My goal isn't historical accuracy, it's to create something interesting, thematic, and fun, and to my knowledge, an ancient South American themed Space Marine chapter isn't present in the setting in any meaningful way, so I think there's plenty of space for that aesthetic. Since the Rainbow Warriors are described as Ultramarine successors, I'm going to assume that the Codex Astartes forms the basis of their organisation. That means a veteran first company, battle companies in the 2nd through 5th, reserve companies, an assault company, devastator company, and then a scout company. I'm also assuming their shoulder pad trim follows the Ultramarines' colour-coded system. For a chapter centred around colour symbolism, it feels entirely appropriate. I'm deliberately going to avoid named heroes, however. I'd rather leave that space open for the community to create their own legends. I also love the concept of Jaguar and Eagle warriors, so each company will be associated with a symbolic animal and a particular doctrine of warfare. Let's also agree that while the Rainbow Warriors are certainly known for deploying entire companies into a conflict, one of the key differences between them and a standard Codex-compliant Astartes chapter lies in how they organise their battle formations. Rather than fighting in rigid company formations, their forces often comprise a mix of squads drawn across multiple companies, bringing together complementary specialisations and fighting styles to achieve victory. In this sense, the Rainbow Warriors possess no true reserve companies, as every company remains an active contributor to the chapter's battlefield operations. Prepare for some janky Photoshop. First up is the Veteran Company, or White Company. White could feature heavily across their armour, perhaps even replacing the standard helmet colours entirely. Since white light contains every colour of the rainbow, I imagine the first company as the true Rainbow Company. Veterans from every company gather here, bringing with them the traditions and fighting styles of their former grouping. Perhaps they display multiple colours on their armour to represent masteries of several fighting styles, similar to how Elder Aspect Warriors could attain the rank of Autarch after mastering different disciplines. Then we have the second company, the Jaguar Company, whose colour is yellow, the chapter's primary battle company. Much like the Ultramarine second company, this formation receives the lion's share of glory and attention, or should we say the Jaguar's share. Jaguar warriors were among the most prestigious warriors in Aztec society, making them a natural fit. Their doctrine emphasizes stealth first, violence second. They close unseen, using darkness and terrain to approach their target before unleashing overwhelming close-range aggression. Captains and sergeants adorn their armour with feline motifs and wield obsidian-toothed chainswords. Despite their focus on assault, they generally avoid jump packs, viewing them as too cumbersome for a truly stealthy approach. Then we have the third company, whose colour is red. They're the Eagle Company. The Eagle Company favours death from above. They field larger numbers of assault marines than typical battle companies and rely heavily upon aerial assaults and rapid strikes. Red symbolises the sun, light and nobility. The company favours flamers and melter weapons, descending upon enemies in fire and fury. They are shock troops, whose purpose is to shatter enemy morale and scatter opposition before a coordinated defence can form. Many favour the Mark VI Corvus armour for its avian symbolism, with sergeants painting the beak red. The fourth company, Green Company, whose heraldric animal is the serpent. Inspired by the feathered serpent, the fourth company seeks balance between the earth and sky, aggression and restraint. As a result, they are often considered the chapter's most codex-compliant company. Knowledge and preparation are their greatest weapons. They place exceptional value on intelligence gathering, tactical flexibility, and strategic planning. The company's balanced outlook also attracts an unusually large number of the chapter's librarians, who finds the fourth company's philosophy particularly welcoming. The fifth company, Puma Company, whose colour is black. Like the Jaguars of the second company, the Puma Company values stealth. However, where the Jaguars strike decisively, the Pumas wage long-range campaigns from the shadows. They engage, withdraw, and strike again. Objective completion matters more than glory. Their methods often make other companies uncomfortable, as they willingly cloak themselves in darkness and avoid recognition. For a chapter who embraces the light spectrum of the rainbow, fighting in the shadows is distasteful for many outside the Fifth. Long-range warfare is preferred, and many of their weapons are suppressed. And then we have the Sixth Company, whose colour is orange, the Condor Company, the Scavengers, the clean-up crew, the company no one wants to become. The Condors are deployed to ensure broken armies stay broken, and they're proud of that. They prevent regrouping, hunt survivors, and secure victory after more celebrated companies have moved on. As a result, they are often accused of stealing glory. In reality, they perform some of the chapter's most essential work. Their equipment tends to be older than that of frontline companies, and many warriors supplement their armour and weapons with battlefield salvage. Consequently, their armour often displays a patchwork of older marks and patterns. As for the Seventh Company, the Purple Company, their animal is the hummingbird. Masters of rapid redeployment, the Hummingbird Company excels at strike and withdrawal warfare. Using rhinos, razorbacks and thunderhawks, they redeploy constantly across the battlefield. They specialise in objective seizure, rapid reaction and strategic flexibility. They are also known to deploy feints, decoys and misdirection. While other companies focus on winning individual engagements, the Hummingbirds pride themselves on seeing the bigger picture. And then we have the Eighth Company, the Butterfly Company. While the Ultramarines traditionally use grey for their assault company, I think the Rainbow Warriors deserve something a bit more vibrant. Turquoise feels fitting. The butterfly held significance within Aztec belief and was often associated with the souls of warriors. In some traditions, fallen warriors are said to return as hummingbirds or butterflies. Because of this, both the 7th and 8th Companies view themselves as spiritual heirs to the chapter's honoured dead, and often act as caretakers for the chapter's dreadnoughts. As for the 9th Company, Blue Company, their animal is the frog. The Frog Company embodies patience. They wait, they endure, and when the moment is right, they strike with devastating force. As the chapter's Devastator Company, they specialise in anti-armour and anti-aircraft warfare. Their armour is adorned with poison dart frog motifs, and many carry ceremonial poison blades and or blowpipes. In reality, this is purely symbolic, as their true weapons are las cannons, missile launchers, and other heavy support systems capable of annihilating enemies from extreme range. As for the 10th Company, the Scouts possess neither a heraldric animal or company colour, not yet. Instead, they are exposed to every tradition and doctrine within the chapter. Only after proving themselves worthy are they assigned to a full company, adopting its colours, customs, and symbolic animal. Until then, their path remains unwritten. So what do you think? The Rainbow Warriors remain one of Warhammer 40,000's great forgotten chapters, born in Rogue Trader, largely abandoned by official lore, yet never entirely erased. Perhaps that's why they're so fascinating. The gaps in their history invite us to speculate, create, and imagine. Whether you prefer the sparse canon lore, the community's South American interpretation, or entirely different ideas of your own, the Rainbow Warriors represent something increasingly rare in modern Warhammer, a blank canvas. And perhaps those are the most interesting chapters of all. Don't forget to like this video if you liked this video, subscribe for more Warhammer content, but in the meantime, take it easy, and I will see you in the next one.